For those of you who maybe read my blog, God forbid, over the weekend, I had the good fortune of going to a homecoming football game with my family, and my daughter was one of the nominees for homecoming queen. But the most important part, at least professionally for me, was when the referees, and it was a great play, this guy caught the ball in the end zone. It was like coming out of a sea of trees, and all of a sudden there's this guy in his hands coming down in the end zone, catching the ball. And that touchdown would have changed the direction of the game for the homecoming team. But it was called offensive pass interference, because what he did, and I actually had noticed it but didn't register, is he propelled himself up into the air by pushing himself off the other players. And so the reason he was higher than them is he kind of pushed them down and pulled himself up, kind of like a little physics equation here, using their force against them to go up in the air. The touchdown did not count, and the team that scored was pushed back 30 additional yards as an offensive pass interference and 2 personal fouls. Now, at that moment, it occurred to me that the judges should have been doing the same thing. They should have acknowledged the fact that the banks were improperly using their size, their force, their mass against individual homeowners illegally. And they can't say they didn't know. There were hundreds and hundreds of guys like myself and women like myself, defense lawyers, onesie, twosies, begging and pleading that this process has to stop, that this rocket docket had to stop. But no. It was just a continued mantra of having to get these foreclosures through the process. So folks who lost their homes, we're prepared to work with you all. We think you have valid claims, and we think that at the end of the day, you are entitled to serious compensation for the loss that you've received or had, and more importantly, the fact that the banks need to be punished for their conduct. Third class of people, group of people, those who may have purchased a home recently and you purchased it through a foreclosure that was done illegally. So what are we going to call those people? Anyone want to give me a name? We're going to call those dirty titles. Now these are folks, and this is ironic, because these are the folks who've been helping bail out the economy. These are the investors. These are the people who've been taking their hard cash that they still had left. And yes, they were looking for good deals, but they were the ones who were helping propel the economy to come back. They were the ones who were making sure that the prices weren't going to continue to drop. They were creating a floor for the value of the economy. Back in 08 at this time, okay, there was nothing going on. Everything had stopped. There was no one buying, no one selling. There was nothing. It was because these investors who were stepping up to the plate that we actually had a real estate market. Yes, it's not a great market, but at least we had a market. What's going to happen to these folks?
Mm-hmm. Are they going to lose it?
Oh, the tax write-off.
They can be thrown out by the folks over here who lost their home. And by the way, these aren't bad people, and I'm representing these people too. I'm going to represent people who lost their homes, and I'm going to represent people who may lose their homes because of the bad foreclosures. Now, these folks will, in all likelihood, file title claims if they were smart enough to buy title insurance. Now, we have always encouraged people who were buying foreclosures at the courthouse steps, or if they were buying property, REO, real estate owned by the banks, to make sure they had title insurance. Fortunately, most of my clients have heeded our advice, and so they will probably be okay. So that's our third group of people. The fourth group of people that are going to have some serious issues are folks involved in the title industry. That's number 4, title industry. I think there may have to be a title industry bailout. I am not sure if the title insurance industry is going to be able to weather the storm. Most title underwriters are saying it's not going to be a problem, we're going to figure it out. But when you do the math, you quickly realize that they're going to be inundated with claims. They'll be inundated with legal fees, and they'll be inundated with a differential between what they can try and get back from the banks, if they can sue the banks successfully, and what the policy amount will be. And let me give you an example. Let's say there was a foreclosure for $100,000 that was purchased by someone at the steps. They had to clean up the house, and they put in $40,000, not take $30,000 of improvements, because the house was stripped down. Okay, so now it's $130,000 they got in. The house looks brand new. It's gorgeous. They're now going to sell it for $155,000. Okay, $155,000 is what they're going to sell it for, and a title insurance policy is going to be issued for $155,000. However, this $100,000 foreclosure was purchased from a GMAC bad foreclosure. So the title company is going to file a lawsuit against GMAC for $100,000. So the title company said, "Oh, I'm going to get back my $100,000, right?" They insured it for $155,000, and they're going to have to spend $25,000 in legal fees. Okay, by the time they're done, they're going to have probably a net loss of maybe $75,000, $85,000 on $100,000. Okay, but what happens if it wasn't $100,000? What happens if it was $200,000? And what happens if they put in $40,000 and they sold it for $200,000? The title underwriters are based on an actuarial system where they expect to have, maybe one claim out of, 300 closings or something. They're not expecting to have, 250,000 claims.
Like casualty insurance.
Right. Yeah. I'll give you an example. If, God forbid, there was a massive earthquake in California, God forbid, and there was all this life insurance out there, if the policies don't have an exemption for earthquakes, okay, they certainly do have exemptions, by the way, for nuclear, for nuclear holocaust, they would be unable to pay for those claims because they're not planning for that kind of a black swan event, an unexpected, unintended event. This crisis that we have here is kind of like when we were in law school, when we were talking about title insurance, you're talking about the Indian burial ground crisis, where all of a sudden the entire area, like Manhattan, right? All of a sudden the Indians say, you know that deal for $25 for those pelts? Well, that deal was no good. There was a treaty that you all forgot about, that you didn't sign, and therefore the Indians, Native Americans, still own Manhattan Island. And let's say they actually brought that claim, and they went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they were successful with that claim. The title underwriters would all go bankrupt because they have no ability to pay all the property owners in Manhattan for the loss of their real estate. This is kind of like that kind of an event. It's an event where you clearly don't expect it. It's not happening on a onesie-twosie basis, but it's going to happen on a massive basis. So we don't expect the title industry to come out of this very pretty. One of the underwriters already, which one?
Lawyers.
No, no, not Stewart. Which one is it?
Old Republic.
Old Republic. Thank you. Old Republic, which is actually part of the Attorney's Title Insurance Fund. Okay, have already announced that they will not insure REO title, real estate owned title, from
GMAC.
Let me see if we have probably this one. From GMAC and JPMorgan Chase, okay? Use a different color, I'm getting bored. GMAC, they will not insure title, and they won't insure title for JPMorgan Chase. They haven't sent a memo out from Bank of America or Wells Fargo. The fund, which is now Old Republic, controls between the two of them well over 60% of the market in the state of Florida. Fidelity, which is the other large title insurance underwriter, has somewhat of an interesting situation because some of the companies that are involved in this crisis are somehow connected to Fidelity. Either they're subsidiaries, they're companies that they've spun off, and so Fidelity's probably going to be a little slower making a determination of what they're going to do. Also, Fidelity gets most of the business from these banks in the REO business, meaning that when a property is foreclosed, the foreclosure mills typically use Fidelity title insurance companies to write the title for their foreclosures. So we have another group, anyone connected to the title industry, that I would say has some issues. Don't forget this White House phone number, 202-456-1111. And by the way, that is the White House, literally.
It is.
It is. Okay. Next group. Anyone want to tell me what the next group is? Anyone have a guess? Come on. Those people who own clean homes, meaning they are not delinquent and that they want to sell their property now. How will this crisis affect people with clean homes?
There will be no market.
So we had folks with dirty homes and we had clean homes, right? Different analysts are saying different things. On the one hand, you're going to have less competition for a little while because so many homes that were in this pipeline of GMAC and Bank of America and Chase are not going to come to market very quickly. And so if you have a clean home, meaning that it hasn't been embroiled in one of these foreclosure crises, you're in a distinct place in the marketplace. And thus, you actually may temporarily see a decline in supply, and thus you may have a short-term spike in the pricing of your home. So that's short-term. Short-term, I say it may actually go up just a little, okay? Long-term, most analysts are now saying that it's going to create a double-dip reduction in prices overall in the state of Florida and elsewhere. And the reason is very simple. You're going to get this massive backlog of foreclosures. And then when the problem gets resolved and they're able to figure out how to get these properties back on the market, there's going to be a dam that's going to be opened, and there's going to be a deluge of new properties, new foreclosed properties that are going to hit the market. And so long term, you're going to see an extended crisis. You're going to see prices remain low for an extended period of time. And even before this crisis, experts were suggesting that prices were going to drop between 10 and 30% over the next 3 years. I would suggest that you're probably now looking long term at that third-year period at probably close to that 30% number. And the reason for that is plain and simple. You learned it in high school economics, and that is supply and demand. And that is that there's going to be this huge onslaught of supply that's going to affect the pricing because demand will at best stay constant. Historically, demand is where we saw price increases. People were paid more money because the economy was doing well, jobs were great, the construction industry was going well, the real estate industrial complex in the state of Florida, which represents as much as 25% of everyone's revenue and livelihood, was doing great. And so we saw the demand side pushing prices up. Now what we're seeing is the supply side pushing prices down. So short term, anyone who has a clean house, God bless you, because you now have a commodity that is valuable. And I think you're going to see short term, folks who have a house to be fortunate.